What a beautiful turnout. It's very emotional. And Thomas, when his son was in the hospital, I called Lee Stringer. He was flabbergasted. What? He'd never been called by a minister before. Had he done something wrong? These opening words, there was a time I would reject those. Time I would reject those who were not of my faith, but now my heart has grown capable of taking on all forms. It's a pasture for gazelles, an abbey for monks, a table for the Torah, Kaaba for the pilgrim. My religion is love. Whichever the route love's caravan shall take, that will be the path of my faith.
Now I'm just going to light our chalice. Please say the words with me. We light our flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In the search for truth, may we be just. In the search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace.
Spirit of light, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, y el corazón cántale tu compasión. Sopla, volar, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arrégame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí. I'm going to see if I can stand up and do this. I may have to sit down at some point. This is a reading, a beautiful reading by the poet David Rosenberg from a poet's Bible. The familiar words from Ecclesiastes, his version of those. There's a time for everything to happen under the sun, to lift anchor in the flow of seasons. Everything has its moment under the uncounted stars, its season of desire, summer of being born, winter of dying, spring of seeding, fall of reaping, winter of killing, summer of healing, spring of uprooting, fall of rebuilding, fall of weeping, spring of laughing, winter of lamenting, summer of dancing, summer making love, winter of surviving, spring of embracing, fall of parting, spring of finding, fall of losing, winter keeping, summer discarding, summer of hot tears, winter of consoling, winter of silence, summer speaking out, spring in love, fall in anger, winter of war and hating, summer of peace and hugging. As the Bible has it, to everything there's a season, a time of war and a time of peace, a time to love and a time to hate. And this morning our thoughts go out to all the victims of violence in Gaza and the West Bank and Israel, to the grieving families, to all those uprooted and unhoused with no place to run, to the innocents caught in the crossfire. We pledge ourselves to resist the expressions of hatred here on our own doorstep. The shooting of 3 young Palestinian men last week in Vermont, gunfire aimed at a yeshiva in Montreal last month. We ask that our leaders be guided by wisdom and foresight as they seek something more than a ceasefire in the Middle East, but an equitable partnership that will allow Jews and Christians and Muslims to live together in the Holy Land as children of one Abrahamic faith. Whatever true peace might look like in this terrible and heartbreaking conflict, we pray that it come quickly. Shanti, Amani, Salam, Paz, Mir, Pax, Shalom. Our world prays for peace. And now we're going to sing a hymn, 346. Come sing a song with me. I'm good, Mimi. Thank you. I've always struggled with foreign languages. Many of you know that. In middle school, I studied French, and when my wife and I visited Paris some years later, I managed to send a waitress screaming out of the room when I tried to order a meal there. Then I switched to German and I managed to just squeak through my requirements for divinity school, where being able to sprechen auf Deutsch was considered a theological language. But you know, those words like Weltanschauung didn't really help me in the practice of ministry. When our adopted son was about 11, we took a visit to his homeland in Korea. And because our whole family had been studying Taekwondo, we knew how to count Hana, Dul, Set, Tasut, Yasut, and we could also say Up Chuggy and Dwi Chuggy, front kick and back kick. Fortunately, we did not go anywhere near the demilitarized zone. We were warned that any false word could set off an incident. And I keep working on Spanish, a language which employs the subjunctive to a far greater degree than our English. And the subjunctive occurs where there's any degree of ambiguity or uncertainty in what's being said or what might happen. For example, hopefully, Mary will come to the party next Friday. Ojalá María venga a la fiesta el viernes que viene. Hopefully she'll do that and won't be washing her hair that night. And I've pretty much given up. I hit the wall at the subjunctive, you know. I've given up, not just because it's hard, but because all of my statements in Spanish already have a high degree of imprecision and ambiguity. So this just seemed like adding an extra layer of complication. And all these experiences have forced me to ask the question of just how much vocabulary and grammar you really need to travel or get around in the world. And I've come to the conclusion that beyond a few obvious phrases like, you know, where's the baño? The successful traveler really only needs 4 words. Hello, goodbye, thank you, and I'm sorry. And these very simple utterances will cover most of the difficulties that are liable to confront the average tourist, whether you're visiting Iceland or India speaking Farsi or Greek. And more than that, these basic words will cover most of the contingencies that you're liable to encounter on your existential journey, your wanderings through life. You won't need a Scrabble player's dictionary to get through your turbulent youth or your midlife crisis. Although it is nice to know that a'a is the Hawaiian word for lava. You can have a satisfying existence without knowing that, but it is necessary to know how to say hello. And now I have to qualify myself, because it may surprise you to learn that our standard English greeting of hello is a fairly recent vintage. In fact, it didn't even appear in print until the middle of the 19th century, and didn't come into common usage until the invention of the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell thought that we should all answer the phone by saying, ahoy. But Thomas Edison called his switchboard operators hello girls, and that settled the matter. But the original meaning of hello was actually something more like whiskey tango foxtrot, as in, hello, Gary, are you listening? Are you completely nuts? It was an expression of alarm and surprise, a signal to stop and pay attention. Much older greeting etymologically is the salutation howdy, which is a contraction for how do you do, and which comes closer to my meaning. To navigate in the world, you need to be able to share a howdy do, a que pasa, a wie geht's, comment allez-vous, something that brings us into relation with other people in a wider world. Because it's really all about making connections. It's about engagement. The Jewish thinker Martin Buber is one of my favorite philosophers of religion, and in his book, I and Thou, Buber suggests that basic words do not state something that might exist outside them. By being spoken, they establish a mode of existence, or putting this same thought another way, the linguist Deborah Tannen makes a distinction between what she calls rapport language and report language. According to Deborah Tannen, women are much better at rapport language, using conversations to establish interpersonal bonds, while men do more reporting, using conversation to share data and information. Buber gives some fascinating examples of how so-called primitive people use vocabularies that are rich in rapport and relationship. For instance, we say far away. The Zulu have a sentence word instead that means where one cries, mother, I am lost. And the Fuegians of the Yagan tribe, living down at the tip of South America, surpass our analytical wisdom with a sentence word of 7 syllables that literally means they look at each other, each waiting for the other to offer to do that which both desire, but neither wishes to do. Which sounds a lot like Republicans and Democrats in Congress, doesn't it? Buber continues, we greet those we encounter by wishing them well, or assuring them of our devotion, or commending them to God. But how worn out these formulas seem, hail no longer possessing anything of its original bestowal of power, compared with the eternally young, physical, relational greeting of the kafir, I see you, or its American variant, which you may have heard, smell me. Now, I personally like the Sanskrit namaste, which derives from the verb nama, which means to bow, and te, which means you, as it does in Spanish and so many other Indo-European languages. Wikipedia, that ultimate authority, says that namaste literally means I salute your form, which implies an understanding that all beings in this existence are part of the surface phenomenology of Maya, and that beyond the surface, so to say, all beings are a part of Brahman, or the one ultimate essence that underlies it all. And I've also seen this loosely translated as I greet that place in you when you're in that place in you and I'm in that place in me. There's only one of us. And I think that's the hello that we spend our whole lives trying to learn to say. And every person we meet and every time we come together offers another opportunity to practice addressing that ultimate thou, who's the apex and the convergence of every unique you. So, hello is one of the basic words we need, and thank you and I'm sorry should be a little bit easier to grok, because life really is a continual blessing, and as Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer we ever uttered were thank you, that would be enough. And repentance is necessary because you may have noticed we're always messing up. I know I'm speaking to a certain demographic here, but you probably remember the novel and the movie Love Story. Yes, love means you never have to say you're sorry. There was never a more foolish line uttered. On the contrary, love, or staying in a mutually healthy relationship, means having to humble yourself and eat crow several times a day. And at this point, some of you may be wondering why I haven't included I love you among the other necessary phrases in our traveler kit bag. Te amo, equiliba dick, maybe even besame mucho. Well, the truth is I have just not found I love you to be all that useful, especially when traveling. Ojalá que Maria venga a la fiesta, but I never seem to get invited to that particular party. And it may be that in marriage, words like thanks and I apologize have more staying power than any amount of pillow talk. Love, or certainly romance, is a feeling that comes and goes, but common courtesy, words like please and thank you and excuse me, these can be daily habits that express a fundamental respect for one's partner. Gracias, perdón, entschuldige bitte. Whether you're traveling the country of marriage or the territories of work and friendship, these words are endlessly restorative and useful. And that brings me to the last point in the vocabulary lesson, adios and adieu. I think that goodbye may be the single hardest word we have to master, and maybe also the most important. The Buddha taught that non-attachment is the key to release from suffering. It's the key to living in the present moment and to achieving some kind of peace or enlightenment, because impermanence is of the nature of things. Life is transitory and evanescent. And we create grief for ourselves and for other people when we try to cling to people and moods and sensations that are simply fleeting. Holding on too tightly becomes counterproductive. Yet I'm also convinced there's such a thing as good grief. There's such a thing as healthy heartache. Change inevitably creates anxiety, and loss should produce tears, but the tears are also part of the healing. So as we gather on this last Sunday together, bidding each other bon voyage, I want to say thank you all for these many wonderful years together. I thank you for the kindness and support that you've shown to me and Dory. I've always had some regrets that living at a distance, I couldn't be more involved in the community and in your daily lives here. But despite that distance, I've always felt that this is my congregation. This is the place where I have felt welcome and empowered to speak the truth in love. And here at this parting of ways, this would be a good time to ask yourselves what it is that you need to move forward with creativity and grace. What are you grateful for? What are your regrets? What do you need to do to give a glad greeting to this next leg of the trip? Every ending is also a beginning, and the Unitarian Congregation of Taos is launching into some new territory. I'm sure the board has been having some late night discussions about what next. There's some uncertainty, but the truism is that in smaller congregations, especially like this one, ministers come and go, but the congregation endures. And you may have heard this before, but church consultants, that is, people who get paid for having opinions for a living, they often liken smaller congregations being 70 people or fewer. They liken those institutions to cats. Cats are self-sufficient. They're independent. They do not take direction well. They're not owned by anyone. And their primary allegiance is not to a pastor, but to each other, to the bonds of friendship and shared history. And they offer an intimacy and informality that larger megachurches just can't match. And they tend to stay small because that do-it-yourself style of leadership is their great strength, their great virtue. And like cats, they have 9 lives. They will probably never grow into dogs. But nevertheless, they always seem to land on their feet. So I think that you cats are going to do just fine on this next part of the journey. It's another land, another country waiting to be explored. It's as bright and inviting as anything in the Rhodes Scholar brochures. You may forget your toothbrush, but don't worry, it's going to be okay. For the savvy traveler with hello, goodbye, thank you, and I'm sorry in your phrase book, the trip will be worth the ticket.
Thank you, Gary. That was another one of your inspiring talks. We really appreciate it. This is the time during our service when we share in the work of the congregation by contributing to it. We will take the offering at this time. Thank you for your gifts, and thank you for giving them. Please rise as you are able and join us in singing hymn 131, Love Will Guide Us.
May you know fully and deeply the blessings of each of your heart's seasons, the inward turning of winter, spring's lush renewal, the effortless, steady growth of summer and autumn's rich harvest. May your passage from season to season be blessed, eased by hands to hold, and by the light of love to guide you on.
Please join us as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.